So sitting to my left here, I've got the Sidewinder X1 from EVNOVO, or formerly known as Artillery, and we're going to go over how to install our LCD conversion kit so we can get rid of the touchscreen and get a screen that gives you a lot more features and allows you to flash the firmware without having to go in and unplug the touchscreen. So let's get to it. I'm going to show you what's involved. So as you can see here, we have our stock Artillery X1. In the front of here, I've got our LCD that's already installed in the case, and this will come to you like this. It comes pre-installed. We have the two LCD headers on here, and then if we look on the side here, we have an SD slot. Now I do want to note that these are all prototype parts, so the final versions may look slightly different and slightly better. In addition to the LCD, we have the actual LCD bracket, which goes on the front corner here. We have the plug cap to cover up the SD slot and USB ports, since these will no longer be used. We have the bolt with the nut that will attach the LCD to the bracket through the little holes here, and the LCD cable pass-through cover, which will go behind where this was once we take this out to allow the new LCD cables to pass through to plug into this one. So I'm going to show you guys how to get into your X1 and install this kit. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure your printer is unplugged from the wall and anything else. Now you're going to turn the printer on its side so we can remove this bottom plate here. So on this bottom plate you actually have 6 screws that need to come off. So grab your favorite Allen key or T-handle and take these screws out. So now we got the bottom panel removed, and you can just take a look at everything in the machine. You've got your Y motor, your AC receptacle, your solid state relay, power supply, breakout board with all the cables, the touchscreen controller board, your main board, and then all the other cables here. We got a data line here for the touchscreen. This is for the filament sensor, and we got our touchscreen in the corner here. So the first thing we're going to do is take this cable out, which is for the touchscreen, because we're no longer going to need that. So just grab it by the plug here, unplug it at both ends, and then you can take it out of the machine. The next thing we need to do is relocate the filament sensor because it's processed through the touchscreen board, and we need to move it down to the X Plus connector on our main board. So you're going to need to unplug it from here. Some of the machines may have tape on them. If they do, just take it off. And on my particular machine, we have a zip tie right here. So I'm going to need to cut this zip tie so I can bring the cable all the way down here. When you cut the zip tie, be careful not to get any wires. And now you can see we've got a little more length on this. So on our factory control board, we have our X, Y, and Z end stop connections. And if you notice here, we have a second red connector here. This is the X Plus, and we're just going to take this plug for our filament sensor and plug it into this header. So this will now let us have the main board control the filament sensor since we're removing the touchscreen. So the next thing you'll need to do is twist these little tabs so they're straight. If you notice, they kind of bend them out, and you just need to bend these straight so we can push the LCD out that's in here. You can do this with a pair of needle nose pliers or even flush cutters. Just don't squeeze too hard. So if you see here, I can grab the tab and turn it straight. And we need to disconnect the LCD before we can take it out. So you peel back this tape, be very gentle unless you don't care about ruining it. And if you notice here, we've got a connector for the 2 ribbon cables. Take your screwdriver with a flathead on it. Push these tabs up on the left and right, and now the cable comes out. So if we pull this up on the outside, you can wiggle it out. You want to make sure that these tabs are going through the holes. If not, you might need to press on them to actually get them to go through the holes. And if they're not fully straightened out, just go in there with your screwdriver, kind of poke at them, get them straight, and then push the screen down a little bit, and then the bottom ones will release. You see here, and now our LCD comes out. You can see here my LCD is now removed, and we can set that off to the side. So you can leave this board in here or you can take it out. If you are going to use the included cap to plug up this hole, you're going to want to leave this in because it actually secures with the USB port. I am, however, going to remove the tape off here just so it doesn't get in the way. So now we have the touchscreen removed. It's completely disconnected from our board. The next thing to do is we're going to need to install the cables to connect the new LCD to our main board here. Now in the kit, you will get 2 long 10-pin cables, and they'll look like this. They're just ribbon cables. Now on mine here, I've gone ahead and wrote a 1 at each end, so I know that this is the EXP1 connector. And on the other one, I've wrote a 2. So I know once this is plugged in and the cables are coming out here, I know which one goes to which connector on my LCD. Now on this main board, this port that's closest to the stepper driver, this is EXP1. And the one below it is EXP2, and these are keyed. So make sure when you put them in that the key is going the correct direction, and you want to make sure the marked cable, you see how this has a red marking on one, they're both going up or they're both going down. So if I put it in like this, it will be going down. I want to make sure both my LCD cables are going the same direction. So I'm going to plug the one labeled 2 into the bottom port. And I'm going to plug the one that I labeled 1 into the top port. So I wanted to give you a closer look at how this should look. You can see this is my 1 cable, and this is my 2. Both the keyed portions are in the correct position for the board. And if you see here, my number 1 cable is going the same direction. What I mean by making sure they go the same direction is sometimes these cables, they can actually flip it. So if I plug the other end in, you can see here, the keyed portion is correct, but now my red wires are facing each other. They should be going the same direction. So you double check that before you put everything in, and make sure that your number 1 wire, which is the red one, on these cables are both going the same direction. So they should both be, if they're both at the top, they should be both at the top. If they're both at the bottom, they should both be at the bottom. So the next thing to do is put the cap in here that we provide. You can see the little retention holes where the stock LCD went. And all you need to do is take the part that we provide, and you'll hear it snap in. Now with the machine facing us from the bottom, you're going to take your first cable and push it out through the hole. And take your second cable . So you will have plenty of slack. Any excess can be pushed back into the machine. But at this point, we're done with all the cabling on the inside, and all we have to do now is put the bottom plate back on. Now, when you guys put the bottom plate back on, you'll take the bracket that we supply, and this will go on where the plate was. So the plate will go on, and the screw here will secure this to the machine. So let's go ahead and put our plate back on. I'm going to put all the screws in except for this one. So we have 5 of the 6 screws installed. The last one is the one for this corner. Now when you tighten this down, make sure that the bracket is sitting flush on the actual corner of the machine. And then go ahead and tighten it down. And there we go. So now our mounting bracket is installed on here. And we can go ahead and turn the machine back upright. So as you can see here, we've got our 2 cables here. We got number 2 and number 1. And we now need to put the LCD screen onto here. I would recommend putting this on before you connect the cables. So take the included bolt here and put the LCD on here. So you can see here the bolt goes through the LCD and then it will go into the actual mount. Now the screw will thread itself a little bit into the main bottom bracket. The holes on the LCD are actually a little oversized to give you a little more wiggle room depending on your printer configuration. But there is a nut included so that once you get it the angle you want, you can then secure it so it doesn't move. Well, if you look over here, you can see the bolt is coming through the other side. Go ahead and put the nut on. And you can hear I'm threading into the plastic. You can go ahead and keep turning. It'll break loose through the plastic. And now we're going to use the nut to secure it. So right now, you can see my LCD is pretty tight. If I back it off a little bit, it'll loosen up so I can actually adjust it. So you can go all the way up like this, or at the front. I'm going to put it somewhere in between. But before that, we need to connect our LCD cables. So on here, we have the two ports. This is EXP1 and this is EXP2. Remember, we labeled these cables. This is 2 and this is 1. I'm going to put 1 into the 1 header right here and put 2 into the EXP2 header. Now you can see I can just tuck the extra cabling back inside the printer, and now I can tilt my LCD up. Now the first thing you want to do is verify that you have the connections correct, because depending on the board that's in here and how they have their headers oriented, you might need to flip these. So we're going to go ahead and do that check right now. So all you need to do is now plug your printer in and turn it on and see if the backlight lights up. So my printer's now plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and turn the power on. And you can see there's no backlight. So go ahead and shut it off and just take the plug out, rotate it 180 degrees, and push it in. You can see even though the keyed portion is opposite, it still goes in without a problem, and you need to do this for both of them. So now that we have the cables flipped, let's go ahead and power on again and see if it lights up. If it does, then we're good to go. So the next thing you're going to want to do is head over to our website, and you can actually click Knowledge Base, and you're going to type TH3D Unified, and the link you want is the TH3D Unified Firmware package. So go ahead and click this. So you're going to want to download the latest firmware, which is this link right here. This version number will be changing as we do updates, but go ahead and grab the latest one and let the zip file download. So my download's finished. All I need to do is click it in my bar here on my browser, and we're going to want to extract all the files. So just click this, hit extract, and I'm just going to extract this to my downloads folder. One thing I like to do if you are using a program like WinRAR is right click and copy the path it extracts to, just so I can then type that in quicker. So if I open a run command here and paste in that path, hit enter, it'll take me right to the folder I just extracted. So now we have the folder extracted. I'm going to double click the TH3DUF_R2 folder. And if you're on Windows, you can go ahead and double click this open firmware windows.bat. If you're on Mac, go into this folder here, and there's actually a README file included on how to set up the IDE for use in Mac. Since we're on a Windows computer, I can just double click this right here, open firmware windows.bat, and you'll see our IDE loads up. So this will automatically open Arduino, and all you have to do is click configuration.h at the top of the page. Now you can do a Control F and just search Sidewinder _X1, and that'll take you to the Sidewinder section. So all you need to do to enable this LCD is go here and uncomment this line, which means deleting these 2 slashes in front of it. Go ahead and do a Control S to save it, and you'll see the little squiggly line after this file disappeared. And now we're ready to upload to our printer. So go ahead and connect your printer to your computer with your USB cable, and I'm going to show you guys how to upload the firmware to your printer. I have a USB cable here for my printer. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in on the right side. And even with your printer power off, when you plug the cable in for this machine, it will automatically turn the LCD on. Now, if we go into our tools menu, we need to make sure we have the board selected is Arduino Mega 2560. And we also need to make sure our COM port is selected. Now, to figure out what COM port your printer is on, it's really simple. You can just look at what you have here, unplug it, and go back in and see what disappeared. So in my case, I'm on COM 22. So I plugged my printer back in, and I should see 22 again. So select the COM port your printer's on. Make sure all of your slicers are closed. Anything that can connect to the COM port will interfere with the firmware being able to be flashed. All we need to do now is click the little upload arrow in the upper left-hand corner. And depending on the speed of your computer, it may take a couple minutes or it may take about 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and let this compile, and then it's going to upload to the board. If you want to see more detailed status, if you put your cursor right here on the little bar between the top and bottom portion, you can actually drag this up and see more of what's going on in terms of the status. So as you can see here now, it's done compiling, and we can see that it's uploading to the board. So down in the lower left-hand corner here, it says writing, and you can see it going across, and once it gets to about right here, it'll be done. So I'm going to switch over to the printer's view, and you can see here, if you already have firmware on it, the LCD will be completely locked up. So it just finished flashing. We saw our TH3D logo, and now we're at the actual firmware screen. So if we look on here, we have TH3D U1R2B1 ready, which is the version number. And if you have an EZABL kit, it'll actually say TH3D EZABL ready. But we're not going over the EZABL in this video. This is just for the LCD. There will be a separate one just for this printer coming out shortly. So now I can unplug the USB from my printer. Go ahead and turn the power back on. And you can see here our LCD is booting up. And the first thing I'm going to do is home to make sure everything's working. So I'll show you that right now. To home your machine, you can go ahead and press the knob, go to prepare, and then select auto home. Your printer will now home all of its axes. And that's it. We have the LCD installed, the firmware updated, and now you can enjoy a lot more control on your machine. So I'm going to go through the menus really quick right now and show you guys what you have access to that you didn't before with the stock touchscreen. I almost forgot. The last part to do before we do this is install the plug cap into the USB port to remind yourself that these are not being used anymore. So you can see the little locking tab here is on the front. You literally just put this in here into the slot of the USB port and press it in. So now this is covered up so you don't accidentally put a card in here. You can still use an SD card. It just goes into the side slot here. And this is actually a full-size SD slot, not a micro. You can use a micro SD card in here still if you have a micro to full-size adapter. Many of you guys will probably have these laying around, but the nice thing is now you can use full-size SD cards with this machine. So let's show you guys what you can do with this screen that you couldn't do with the other one. If we press the menu button here, you'll see we have a bunch of new options. We've got an SD card menu. If our SD card was in here, you would see the option here to print from SD. We also have an About Printer option, which gives you info on the printer, in this case the software version, info on the board, and even information on your thermistors. Now, one of the nice things that this gives you that you didn't have in the old one is if you go to Control, we now have all these different menus. So we've got temperature options. We can set the bed to a set speed, and even our fan, which this did have an option on the old screen, but I'm just showing you guys this here. We have our PID values and even a menu to PID tune your hot end right from the LCD. So if you press this button, you can then dial in a temperature. I usually recommend around 230°C. And then it'll go through and tune your hot end all by itself and save the values. If we keep going down here, you'll see we can set our preheat settings for PLA and ABS. If we go to motion, you can adjust your velocity. These are your max speeds. Your acceleration settings. Your jerk. Steps per millimeter. Now, when you do any changes to any of these, you're going to want to go back to Control and hit Store Settings. you'll hear a confirmation beep. Now, you can also clear your EEPROM. So if you want to reset the EEPROM, which I recommend you do after any flashing. So since I just flashed, I'm going to hit reset EEPROM and then press it again. And you'll hear a confirmation beep and it'll exit this menu. So now my EEPROM is reset. You have filament options as well too. You can set your unload and load lengths for the change filament function. And if you have an ABL probe on here, under motion, you'll also have your Z offset. Now, one thing that's nice is even without an ABL probe, if you're printing and you press this button twice, okay, when you're printing, it'll bring up a menu that will allow you to adjust by turning the knob back and forth your nozzle height in real time while it's printing to move it up or down. So this can help you get a perfect first layer much easier whether you have an ABL probe or not. So as you guys can see, it really doesn't take that long to install this kit on your printer. If you want to do this to your Sidewinder X1, we have a link in our video description below that contains the complete kit that includes all the hardware, the cables, and the printed parts to do this upgrade. So if you guys want to get rid of that touchscreen and get some more functionality out of your Sidewinder X1, go ahead and hit that link in the video below. I hope you guys enjoy the new firmware. And as always, these firmwares that we put out all have thermal runaway protection on them. So whether this machine comes with it or not, depending on what version you have, you will have that safety added to your machine. Well, I think that about wraps it up. We will be doing a video showing installing the EZABL on this machine at a later date. And you will need this kit installed on your machine if you do want to have the EZABL on your Sidewinder X1. I'm really looking forward myself to using this machine more now that I have a regular LCD on it, and soon enough I'll have the EZABL on it as well. Hope you guys are having a good one, and as always, happy printing.